Interference, obviously, which comes from the root word interfere, is a tactic that obstructs a direct connection between two pieces, or sometimes between a piece and the square. In other words, this tactic creates an interruption between two pieces or squares so that by cutting them off from one another, something can be attacked that is now undefended. This tactic is not so common, especially with amateurs, and tactical ideas coming from potential interference often go unnoticed. Let us take a look at this position. In here, white dominates the d file with this piling up of the two rooks, and also white threatens to capture this pawn on f7, and of course, it's going to be mate in the next move. Many amateur or inexperienced players would probably play knight to e6 here, or maybe rook to f8 as a defensive move. But hey, there is actually knight d5 check. The idea is to cut the connection off between these two rooks here in the e file, and by doing so, the other one will be hanging or undefended at the cost of a lesser valued piece, which is the knight. If black captures the knight with e takes e5, then of course the rook on d7 will be hanging, so we have queen takes d7, and of course white cannot just capture this c6 pawn because that d1 rook is hanging, so it's going to be up an exchange for black. This position is almost similar to the previous one. It's white's turn here, and the knight jumps to c4, interfering the connection between this rook on c2 and c8, right? Now, unlike the previous position where the opponent was forced to react with a disconnector because of the check, remember? This time, black is not forced to react with that piece. Here, he only needs to save his rook on c2, which now becomes undefended, obviously after that interference tactic. But problem is, it's now trapped. So, the opponent must give up an exchange. If b takes c4, of course, queen takes c2, c takes d3, queen takes d3, and white is better. If c3, then there is rook e4 to c4, and this pass pawn is not going anywhere. If after knight c4, one of the rooks again takes that knight on c4, we have b takes c4, b takes c4, and queen c3. Still, white is better. Take note that sometimes trying to execute the interference tactic with the attempt of trapping the undefended piece may also fail due to, number one, the opponent is not forced into a move. For example, no checks, no mating threats, etc., brought about by the disconnector. Number two, the undefended piece can find a good square to escape, thereby somehow making the interference pointless. Here, white attempts to disconnect the two rooks with bishop to c5. This is indeed a good move here. And that move doesn't force black of anything. No checks, no mating threats, right? Except black will only be concerned on saving his rook, and that rook on c2 can actually get away with rook to e2. Now, the bishop on c5 is hanging and has to move somewhere. So it turns out that here, the move c5 looked pointless at this point. So it has to move somewhere, maybe to b6. And what's the move? Next for black, the rook penetrates. So if you think clearly and carefully about that move, bishop to c5, it only helped black improve this position, and it looked like pointless here. Now, there will be times when, yes, the undefended piece cannot be trapped, cannot be trapped as the previous example. But there will be times wherein the disconnector piece can use it as opportunity to somehow penetrate into the opponent's camp or to a better square. Here, white played knight to c4, leaving black's rook on c2 undefended. Of course, we know what happens if this pawn will take this c4 knight, and this is going to be a free, rook here on c2. Now, almost similar to the previous example, this rook is going to escape to e2, right? Now, rook to e2 finds an escape. But hey, the knight move on c4 here is not going to be pointless because it's now going to be moving to the d6 square, and knight d6 makes the knight more active than before. It's not just about rooks when it comes to interference. Sometimes the bishop can find itself helpless when snared in a place behind enemy lines. Here in this position, after the move d5, the bishop on e4 here is helpless after the queen's support from afar gets disconnected. Even if there is bishop takes b2, queen takes b2, and still bishop on e4 is not finding any hiding place. So this is a good tactic wherein one piece up for white. Interference is not just about obstruction between two pieces. Many times it's also between a piece, a defender, and an important square. Again, it's not just about two pieces. Sometimes it's also about a piece and an important square or a key square. In this position, black's queen on d4 is key for a protection here to defend this g7 here, a checkmate for white. But white disconnects this defensive axis by rook to e5. And black must lose his queen. Huge advantage for white because checkmate is inevitable.
Hey, check this video out to make sure that you get more important information to bring your chess to the next level.